Alrighty, and here we are, Frieza 700, back with Warhammer 40K lore. We are discussing Jago Sevatarion, the very own Prince of Crows, the creator of mass corpses. Haha.
After the
So let's talk about Jago when he was a boy. So he was raised on Nostromo Quintus. This was the capital of the planet, and it being a planet that Conrad Kurz had taken over, it was a planet filled of fear, death, and more or less morbidity. Now, Jago, we don't really know too much about him. We just know enough. We know that his mother always said to him that he would understand humans eventually, that he would get better at being empathetic. But the problem is that Jago was very smart and was super arrogant. And we see this at a very young age, that he would just predict that someone's a piece of shit, and then would you know it, they would confirm it for him. So he always had a hard time sympathizing with people or even trying to stoop to their level because he just always was right. Now, we find something interesting with this boy. This boy has the ability to communicate with the dead. That's strange. Why would a child be able to communicate with the dead? Is this what is this? Like, I don't get it. This was in a movie, but this was never in a character in Warhammer 40K to communicate with the dead. Well, it turns out he was actually a psyker, but not just a psyker. He was actually quite capable as a psyker. Now, to him, he didn't like this, so he repressed his psychic abilities. And it turns out later on that a lot of his trainers, more or less, actually tried telling him to suppress it as well. Because, again, the Night Lords weren't too fancy with psychers, and once the Nicaea ruling was issued across the entire Imperium, psychic was really more or less banned. So, really, this was a good call to repress his psychic abilities. The only problem is that when you repress your psychic abilities, this actually manifests and damns your body. Literally, the older and older Jago got, the more and more his body was pretty much turning on itself, and he was just dying slowly. He would always cough up blood, or randomly blood would start coming down his face. He was a very torn man from repressing his psychic powers. Now, Jago, though, what was his role in the Night Lords? Well, he was actually their first captain. He rose through the ranks swiftly. He was regarded as the best duelist in the Imperium. As far as Space Marines go, again, because he was around the time where Primarchs were around him, and one Primarch, even the weakest, could easily whoop his ass. But amongst other Space Marines, he was the best duelist. That's, of course, we can't tell for sure if it's because he cheats or not. Because he fought Sigismund, who also was the best duelist, and he was in charge of the Imperial Fist Legion. Well, those two fought, and their duel lasted for 30 hours, until finally Jago just headbutts Sigismund. Now, headbutting is illegal, and as such, he got disqualified from the fight. But Sigismund had a good hearty laugh once he got headbutted. And really, this shows Jago's, he yearns to be like Sigismund, who's able to just crack a joke, laugh, relax, and bond with his battle brothers. But Jago isn't that type of person. Instead, he's cold, cunning, ruthless, and this is what allowed him to rise through the ranks so quickly in his legion and easily become the equerry of Conrad Kurz, which basically means he's like his advisor nonetheless. Now, it's kind of interesting is that during the Horus Heresy, Jago was the first one to shout out the phrase, "Death to the false emperor." Now, that's really interesting, because that would show that Jago really believed in the idea that the Emperor failed the legions somehow. Now, again, I don't know too much about that because the Emperor didn't really do anything to them, but at the same time, the Emperor didn't really appreciate what the Night Lords did most of the time. Like, yes, he would send them to deal with rebellious worlds, but the extent that they would deal with it was definitely not in the Emperor's vision, and he would never glorify them as much that many of the Night Lords wished. But hey, that's probably the reason why Jago had no issue betraying the Emperor. So we find out later on in the Horus Heresy that Jago starts wearing these red gloves. Now, these red gloves don't symbolize anything to us. I mean, why the fuck would they? They're just red gauntlets. What's so fascinating with these red gauntlets? Well, in the Night Lords, Conrad Kurz said himself that he punishes criminals, even Space Marines. And in his eyes, his own Space Marines are criminals. Well, he started issuing red gauntlets to whoever he deemed was foolish or really guilty of a crime. And if you wore these red gauntlets, what it means is that you are now sentenced a death sentence. Now, I know you think that's strange, but essentially what it means is Conrad Kurz will kill you at any given point or any given time at his so choosing. Now, Jago was issued these, but we don't know why, because Jago just simply responded he was both a fool and he was guilty of something. But he never really goes in depth with it. And honestly, I just think that that's because Conrad Kurz, he viewed himself as guilty around this point in time, because this is when Conrad Kurz was fighting the Dark Angels. And when he was fighting the Dark Angels, he had that realization that he is a terrible person and that he needs to be punished. Well, Jago was the only other person in the whole legion of the Night Lords that the Night Lord Space Marines would rally under should Conrad die. So in Conrad's point of view, Jago's essentially him. So Jago's guilty of something and gave him the gauntlets. That's my interpretation. You guys may have different interpretations, but just know that this is mine. So, what happened to Jago though? Like, this is kind of like a big question. Like, where is he right now in 40K? 10,000 years. That's a hard question. Because I think he's dead. I think he died in the 30K times when he was a prisoner. Other people are rumoring that he may actually be alive. Some people say that he's part of the Carcharodons. I would think that that's bullshit. I think that's funny, actually, but still. I find it interesting that people would think that Jago is even alive. Because the last time we leave off Jago is in the book The Long Night. And The Long Night's a good read. Because what we find out is that Jago is sitting in a cell. And he is just guarded by Dark Angels. And every so often, the Dark Angels come in to his unlit room, because after all, he's Nostraman. And since he's Nostraman, he doesn't have irises, so he can't tolerate light. Well, the Dark Angels come into his room and drop off a bucket of tasteless sludge to really give him nutrition. But every time the Dark Angels go in, they just look at him with such disgust. Like, every time they go in, he's either got blood on him, he hasn't bathed in a long time. He eats with his hands because they can't trust him with a spoon. Yeah, he's that fucking deadly that they can't even trust him with a fucking spoon. Now, while Jago's in this, though, he always verbally abuses his guards. Like, whenever they start arguing with him, he just starts to show them how more and more he really had no choice but to join the traitors. And the Dark Angels can't really give a response to it, so they just start telling other Dark Angel guards, "Ugh, stop talking to him. There's no hope. We can't even talk to this man." And it's like, oh, okay. So, because you can't prove I'm wrong, therefore you won't talk to me. That's essentially what Jago's situation is. And it's a really shitty situation to be in. But we do know this is that he's probably bound for execution. So again, this really is saddening that here's the greatest warrior of the Night Lords and arguably all the Astartes ever had. And does he die in a field of glory? No. Instead, he gets executed at some post, defenseless, naked, butt-ass nude, and just gets his head chopped off. But other than that, though, we learn a lot about Jago. Like, of course, his name, Prince of Crows. Now, you may think that's a weird name, but as he tells his spirit that keeps haunting him inside his cell, he tells her, because, mind you, he can hear voices from the dead, and it's painful to him. Well, while he's in prison, this female keeps appearing out of nowhere, and she keeps, like, talking to him. And at first, he thinks she's a dead spirit. And she's just talking to him, giving him companionship, really. And he actually misses her company at some point during his imprisonment. But she asks him, why is he named the Prince of Birds, the Prince of Crows? And Jago responds, and I quote, "Crows eat corpses, and I create a lot of corpses." This is by far my favorite fucking line in any of the books. So whenever I become YouTube famous and I ask the question, what's my favorite line ever in Warhammer 40K? That's my favorite line. Crows eat corpses, and I create a lot of corpses. That is just so fucking awesome. I love that phrase. But, besides that, Jago later finds out that she's actually an astropath. So she's a psyker. She's alive. And he finds out that really, because she communicated with him, that she's punished. And he doesn't like this at all because, mind you, he sees himself as justice. He doesn't see himself as a criminal like Conrad did. He sees himself as the epitome of justice. He sees himself as the judge of everybody. Well, this girl is doing nothing wrong. She just sees a broken spirit and is trying to reconcile him, trying to give him companionship. She's doing a good thing. She's trying to help a poor soul. And yeah, at first he's kind of like standoffish. He doesn't like her company. He doesn't like someone prying into his affairs. He even gives her one hell of a yelling about how, like, do you find this entertaining? Huh? Do you come to just poke at me while I'm in a cage? And it's like, yeah, I understand that. But at the same time, he starts dreading her being gone for so long. For days, he's just sitting there like, oh, I wish she was here because I'm really lonely. And of course, once he finds out that her supervisor crippled her permanently by finding out that Jago was talking to her, the overseer actually broke her back irreparably from such a beating that he gave her. And right when this was all happening, the Dark Angels discovered that since Jago has been compromised, since he's been talked to by the astropath, they were going to escort him to a different prison facility. Now, I thought this was going to be his execution. Turns out this was just them moving him to a different place. But I wouldn't be surprised if that different place that they bring him to does execute him. Now, here's where we get to the end of Jago. So, Jago is walking and being escorted by a tactical squad with a librarian. Now, the librarian's interesting because, he's psychic. But it's just weird that they would have one with him. I think they just needed every tactical advantage they could get against the defenseless, spoonless, harmless Space Marine. But all of a sudden, they just stopped moving. And Jago's just looking around like, that's a little strange. Well, the astropath is freezing them. She is mentally attacking them and freezing them. The only person that's giving her trouble is the librarian. And you can see in the librarian's face as he's just struggling in this battle in his head. Well, she tells Jago to run. Go. Now's your chance to flee. But Jago takes a pistol from one of the tactical marines, points it at the librarian's head, and blows his brains out. And then she starts criticizing him. You didn't have to kill him. No, but you were asking me to. And then instead of running away, he actually runs towards her. And this is where it gets really romantic and really saddening, is that this is the last time these two will ever see each other. And he comes up to her room where she's sitting, guiding the ship as an astropath. But as he comes up to her, all he has is like this tiny little window to gaze at her from. And all she says to him telepathically is, "So that's what you look like, Jago." And she puts her hand up on the glass, Titanic style. And it's like, oh, damn, that's a real feels over reels right there. Whew. Feels moment. Now, Jago does something that's very interesting. This speaks true to his character. I'd actually be pissed if he escaped. What he does instead is he sees the life pod, and he thinks to himself, no, there's no time. There's no time for this. And he charges the other direction and goes straight to the chamber that the Overseer's in. Now, the Overseer is in a mental status where he's guiding his ship, guiding his astropaths aboard the vessel. He's really engaged in his mind at the moment. Well, it's hard to be engaged in your mind at the moment, connected to all this machinery to your head, when all of a sudden your chamber doors open and this 8-foot-tall behemoth of a man grabs you by your ankles and strips your fucking mind right the fuck out of that. Yeah. Jago tortured this man. He actually strangled him for a good 30 minutes. Because Jago even said it himself. He, the Overseer who pretty much broke the girl's back, he told her how unlucky he is. Because most murderers would have killed him by now from just choking him too damn hard. But unfortunately for him, Jago is an experienced killer. An expert killer. And while he choked this man to death, he screamed, "I am justice!" And that was pretty much it. He was surrounded by dark angels, and finally they just said, "Surrender!" To which Jago just threw the lifeless corpse of the Overseer at their feet and just said, "Alright, I will go with no issues." And that's the end of Jago. That's the last we ever heard of him. Besides that, we have tales and myths from the Traitor Night Lord Legion, where some of their astropaths who are corrupted by the warp would actually say that they still feel Jago's presence, that he is alive. I don't believe this, because it's hard to go from a max facility to freedom. I don't give a shit how good you are. Like, these Astartes do not fuck around. They don't give him a spoon. They don't even bathe him. He is stuck in a chamber, and he's surrounded by librarian guards. Like, yeah, he is not getting out. Especially since his body is killing itself from him repressing his psychic abilities. So really, Jago's gonna die one way or the other, either from execution or from simple self-mutilation of holding his psychic powers down. So, that's about it about Jago. I know I left a few things out, like how Jago got his mental ass kicked by his Primarch. But I figured that those would be stories that you guys would enjoy in your own personal adventures when you read the books, like I have. I personally love The Long Night the most out of all of Jago's books. So, hopefully you guys do as well. See you guys next time. It's been Frieza700. Comment down below, like, comment, subscribe as always. But just comment down below what you guys think. Do you guys think I should do more first captains of the legions? Do you guys think that I should do more lore on more broad and generic topics like the legions themselves? You guys tell me. I've actually been really tied up lately. That's why it's been taking me a while to upload, because I've been really tied up playing this new game that I got, Mass Effect Andromeda. And I know you're going to say it's not a new game, but for me it is, because I just got it, because I've always been skeptic of it. I've actually been enjoying it so far, so that's why I kind of took a while to make this video. So, see you guys next time.